I'm Khyra Steiner, and you're listening to Elaborate with K. Elaborate with K. Hey guys, welcome back to Elaborate with K. So, first of all, I got my hair done. But second of all, and most importantly, honestly, happy Black History Month. So, when I was trying to come up with episode topics for this month specifically, um, I was honestly struggling a little bit. I was thinking about like some of my favorite podcasts and the topics that they usually talk about just in general. And it was really hard because I have some podcasts that I absolutely love, and they're not by Black creators. So they're not Black influencers, content creators, whoever is hosting the podcast, host in general. And so I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about how they don't necessarily have the same pressure, not necessarily pressure, but the same, I don't know, like the focus of their podcast has absolutely nothing to do with being Black because they aren't Black. So they don't necessarily have the same, I don't want to say obligation, because I love this podcast and I love the topic, and I like all of the reasons that I made this podcast is because I wanted to have a platform for, Black people to kind of just listen to like lifestyle things from a Black point of view. And I kind of wanted to create a podcast that I wish I would have had growing up and like that I would love to listen to. But I was thinking about it, and I was thinking they don't even have, it's not an expectation of them. Like they don't even have to address it, right? Obviously, you should, but it's not something that necessarily, quote unquote, like directly affects them. And I was thinking and thinking and thinking. And so the topic for today's podcast is going to be how Black people typically have to and are told they have to work twice as hard to do anything and get anywhere. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so as we discussed in the last podcast episode, I am in my last semester of my senior year of college for my undergraduate degree. And that's a crazy thing to say. I worked so incredibly hard to get to this point. It is a huge accomplishment for me. I loved school and loved learning growing up, and being able to go to a good college, and study something that I absolutely love, and be able to participate in the sport that I love, and spend time with all of my really good friends. And I've just been given so many amazing opportunities throughout my life. And, I appreciate them so much. And I'm so, so grateful and thankful and all of that. But I can't say that I went through everything to get to this point easily. I can't say that, I flew by and didn't have to worry about anything. Like there's definitely a level of pressure and just expectation and this different mindset that you have to go into. So I think I've talked about this before, but I went to a predominantly white school in middle school, high school, and now in college. So from the time that I was 11 years old in 7th grade up to now I'm 21 years old in 16th grade, technically, I have been at predominantly white schools. And they it's interesting because they're all private schools, or they were both private schools. So you do have to apply and get in. But it's this idea of, even going to like a job interview, an internship interview, or an interview for school, an interview for anything, honestly, is you're going in and you're like, I really need to prove myself. Like, I need to look the part. I need to super explain and have like all this great experience and just prove to them that I can do this, that I am eligible to get into the school, to do this job, to complete this project, whatever it is. And that's like a really hard and draining thing of just thinking about, it's just like you walk into a room and you see the number of Black people, or you look at a group of interns, or a group of an incoming class, or a group of athletes on specific sports teams or the members of a club, and you look at and you count and you're very much aware of the number of Black people that are in this specific group. And so it's not only do I have the qualifications to get into this group or this job or whatever it is, but then it's also, do are my qualifications going to be enough for that? Because I don't know, I feel like it's this thing of, you don't always feel like your qualifications or on paper is enough. And it can be a thing of like, you look on paper, you are absolutely perfect, 100% the candidate, but you walk into this room, you walk into this space, and you're met with a sea of like white faces. And suddenly you're different and you feel like there's so much extra scrutiny or an extra little just eyeballs on you. They're looking at you a little closer, a little tighter. They have a little higher expectations. The bar's been raised just because of what you look like. And, that's definitely something that I've been aware of when I'm applying to internships or joining different clubs, or even on the first day of school walking into class and you're like, am I the only one? Is there another one? Like, it's such a conscious thing, something that you have to be, that you are so aware of, just growing up Black, especially growing up Black in these predominantly white spaces. And it's something that that I don't know like how to really explain it. This episode is apparently just going to be me rambling, but I think too, like, in the world, right, in general, I think people talk a lot about how everything is about who you know, and it's about getting the right connections, And this isn't going to be a talk about nepotism and all of that, but this is saying that I think, me wanting to go into the entertainment industry and being around a lot of people who are in the same boat and studying in school for that, or want to go into some kind of entertainment creative field. And you hear that all the time. You hear it's about who you know, it's about word of mouth and who can vouch for you. And I think that for me, especially, I think being Black, it feels so much more important as well to kind of have your references and your resources and your recommendations intact and have them be strong and powerful and moving, because you might be overly qualified, the most qualified person for this job, but there is always that small chance that you are being looked at, that your application is being looked at by someone who might have a little bit of like a discrimination, or that might look at you a little differently because of what you look like, because of the color of your skin, because of something that you can't control. And in instances like that, or in instances where you're trying to break into a space that is not full of people that look just like you, it feels so much more important to have that backing of those recommendations and that word of mouth and those people that can vouch for you and that are able to say, no, like, I know this person, I know this girl, I know Khyra, like, she can do it, she has the abilities, she is going to get the work done. And it just, I don't know, I think it's really interesting too, just thinking about the idea of we're having to work twice as hard as a Black person. um I think, and I know there's other demographics that deal with this and deal with this on different scales and like higher scales. Like, I know that I've talked to my boyfriend about it, about the idea of having to work so much harder, especially as a Black man, because people just have that extra bit of side eye when they see you, or that extra bit of like, they step back, they clutch their pearls, whatever it is. There's that extra level of like discrimination or racism or whatever you want to call it, that is kind of not necessarily holding you back, but it's an extra step, it's an extra obstacle, an extra hurdle that you have to cross. But yes, so this idea of having to work twice as hard to get into the same space or the same place, it shouldn't be a thing, it's not fair, because that's something that you can't change, but unfortunately it is a lot of times a reality. Yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking about that when it came to thinking about podcasts that I wanted to do for this week, and just reality. And I think that this is also something that it's really hard to explain and to articulate. And um I feel like I've been kind of struggling to form full sentences or complete thoughts and kind of figure it out. And I think that's okay. Honestly, I think that, dealing with so much scrutiny and expectation and just so many eyes being on you and all of these things that you have to deal with as a minority, as a person of color, as a black person, it's really hard. And there's no one specific way to feel about things or one specific way to deal with it. Everybody deals with things differently because everyone's going to be affected by them slightly differently. Even if we're all black, we've all seen discrimination and racism, and we've all been the only black person in a room, but that doesn't mean that it feels the exact same way for all of us. We've all dealt with it differently and had different experiences. And so I think that it's also okay to not be able to fully articulate what you're trying to say or fully be able to articulate your feelings and share them as a speech or verbally express them to other people, the people that you're surrounded by. And it's Black History Month, but it's also it's not and it's never your job to educate the entire population of the world, of your office, of your job, of your school, of your classroom, of your it's not your job to do that. Are not you were not created and you were not put into these spaces to be the sole person telling them everything about Black history. Like that is not your job. And so don't put the pressure of that on yourselves. As Black people, we already have insane insane amounts of pressure put on ourselves by society, and I think specifically by ourselves. We expect so much of ourselves, and it's always like you have to prove something. You feel like you just have to prove I have to prove that I am capable of doing this job. I have to prove that I can do this. I have to prove myself. I have to prove that I belong here. And in reality, you do belong there. You belong in that space. And I think that, working twice as hard, it's unfortunate, but it definitely makes us way harder workers. And we have this strength and resilience that I think no one else can take away from you. Um, Generations worth of it, honestly, because chances are someone in your family that you talk to on a daily basis that has gone through some historic, life changing point in Black history, which is really crazy thing to say. I think even I've mentioned this in I think my first episode or one of the really early episodes, and I think about it a lot too. Is even the idea that we are still having our firsts. There are still so many firsts that haven't been done. The first Black female president, the first Black, all of these different things. I'm sure there's a long, long list of jobs and records and just things to be accomplished by Black people that we haven't done yet. And the fact that we are still on our first is a crazy thing to me, honestly, that there's so many things that still have to be accomplished. But I think that it's also a very hopeful and powerful thing because, there is space for you. No matter what industry, what field you're in, there is a space for you. And we can create it. We can make history. Every single one of us, honestly, has lived through some historic part of Black history in our lives. And it's still going on. We are still going to, honestly, forever be living through historic moments. But yeah, just as hard as it is, and I know it can be hard and it can be discouraging and draining and tiring. So make sure that you're taking your breaks and taking care of yourself, but make sure that you keep working. Um, and you don't have to be working to prove something, and you don't necessarily have to be working to be this voice, this point of representation for the entire race. If you're working, do it for yourself. Do it to make yourself proud, to accomplish what you want to do, meet your expectations, and also be kind to yourself. And know that putting in your effort and putting your best foot forward and doing everything that you can is enough, and that you should be proud of yourself for everything that you've done so far and all of the things that you will continue to do, because for all we know, you could be the next history maker. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Elaborate with Kay. Happy Black History Month, and I'll talk to you next Sunday. Bye. yeah, talk to you next Sunday.